What's up? What's up? What's up? Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am excited in a weird way about this episode because it's really important information, but it's like really hard and jacked up information to be quite honest. So I'll get into who we have on and what we'll be getting into here soon. I am sitting in the drop-in center for COVID rent relief in McKeesport that the Wellness Collective is running that I happen to be the founder of. So a quick housekeeping note, anyone who is struggling with rent in Allegheny County, please definitely apply for this program. It's not like the last set of services or assistance that went out that was absolutely bogus in a lot of ways. So this one is actually pretty decent. If you need additional help with applying or whatnot, feel free to drop in to see us. Our address here is 337 Fifth Avenue in McKeesport, PA. It's not the probation office is right next door to it. And we also have a small pantry here, and we'll be doing some other stuff. So if you need a little support, just want some socially distanced human contact, and need some rent or utility assistance, definitely check us out. Also, did you know it only takes about 25% of a particular community to spark a movement? So if we're talking about Pittsburgh, if we are talking about ending police brutality, it only takes about 25% of us to buy into that actively to spark the change overall. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about creating change. It doesn't take everybody to be on the same page. It just takes 25% of us to be on the same page. So just keep that in mind while we're moving forward. Welcome to the See Us podcast. This podcast was started to hold local narratives of police violence and other systemic types of violence, but also to amplify the voices of people who are typically marginalized, erased, and pushed to the back, Black, brown, and marginalized people. The narrative just got started in honor of Leroy Powell, who was murdered in 2014. He was a 15-year-old child who was murdered. He was a witness in an attempted murder turned infanticide. And his witness statement was played on the 11 o'clock news. This 15-year-old's witness statement was played on the 11 o'clock news. And he was shortly murdered after that. That was definitely the fault of the news, of our local media, not taking care or consideration for this person's life, and now he's gone. So I want to make sure that we are very intentional about the type of media that we share, that we engage in, and that we support and uplift, because it is our lives oftentimes, especially when you're Black or brown. So that's my housekeeping. Other than, I want to also say, if anyone who would like to tell their story, if you got a story to tell, or if you have some good stuff that you want to share and amplify in the community, you can definitely reach out to us. Leave a voicemail. I don't answer phones ever, but leave a voicemail at 412-453-6309, or you can email me at racialjusticeandmedia@gmail.com. So that's all of that. So today we're going to have Paul Jubas, Esquire, local attorney who's been working on a lot of police violence cases in our area. And Paul has been very active in community generally, right? Like, so not just a lawyer, but definitely an active, I would call him an activist and an organizer, because he definitely has been there side by side with the rest of us. So Paul has some very interesting information and stories to tell regarding the cases he's covered, some things that he's noticed as being similarities amongst these different cases. And also right now we are heading up to a very important judicial election that we want to draw some correlations to. So I'm going to stop running my mouth, because this ain't what I do. I'm a social worker, not a lawyer. So I'm gonna bring up Paul. What's going on, Paul? How are you?
Hey, Shannon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I appreciate it. I know how busy you are, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So why don't you start? Why don't you tell us, where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was born in Houston, Texas. My mom moved me to Western PA when I was young. Very lucky that she did, because I have some family members that stayed in that area that didn't fare too well. So I was raised in Western PA, and I ended up going to nice schools, good college, and then going to law school. I started my law practice back in 2015. And then, I do criminal defense and civil rights cases. And, I practice here in Pittsburgh and also in Philadelphia.
Word up. That's dope. Well, thankful for that. What got you into law?
It was, I had a good upbringing. I'm very lucky. It was just kind of expected that I would, go to college, and then, the people in my life pushed me to go to law school, even though I didn't really want to. I didn't know that I could do the stuff that I'm doing today. So like, had I known that I could do this stuff, I would have been a lot more interested in law school. And then even through law school, you don't really learn that you can do like this badass stuff, So, it was kind of like a default. I initially did it because, it would be I could be diversified with that degree. And, but once I did get my law practice up and running, and I started getting involved in these cases, then, it became a lot more real for me. And, it's worth it. And these cases are challenging. And I say this, I say this, with a grain of salt, but it's fun. It's fun to fight these cases. It's very difficult, and they're horrible, so there's nothing good about it. But, in terms of challenging yourself, it's good. And I'm thankful for it.
Word up. It's funny. I say that similarly with social work. It's a super, super diverse and broad workforce, and people just generally don't know that. When I declared social work, people are like, "Oh, you're going to be a baby snatcher." It's like, what? Like, why would you say that to a person? But like, people have this idea that social work means intake, and that's a part of it, but it's like this much a part of it. Like, social work is a super, super broad avenue. But even in my understanding of that, I also didn't realize like how broad it can be and how much you can make of it. It's funny that you say that, because similarly.
Yeah.
Word. All right, cool. So I met you in, during the fight for Romeo Talley. Shout out to Tasha Talley, Dana Denson, and the rest of the family. And this was when you and I met. This was before we even knew who took Romeo's life, right? Like, and so like that was the fight, which is absolutely insane. Like, there was so much fight. There had to have so much human power, like human capital, put in just by getting a name of the person that murdered this person, took this person's life for no reason, like for no reason. That all that effort and intention and resources had to be put forth by just getting the name. But that's when you and I originally connected, and then I come to learn that you worked on a number of cases that have that either I've had either direct or tangential involvement in or aware of, and so I would like to invite you just to talk a little bit about those cases, and what are the similarities have you seen with them?
Yeah, so Ramir is a great place to start. There's something that is absolutely unacceptable, and quite frankly, just disappointing and embarrassing, that we're talking about Romeo Talley, and how it's been handled. There were no body cams. I mean, and to immediately touch on, similarities in police violence in cases in this area, and just that involve the police. You're talking about Romeo Talley. You're talking about Jalen Brown's case that involved the police. You're talking about Mark Daniels, who was killed by the police. All of those cases, none of them had body cams. Now, I apologize, I don't know all the facts of Antoine's case, but I know that there was a video because somebody in a house shot it. But do you know if there were body cams on Rosfeld?
I've never seen body camera footage.
I don't remember. So if that's the case, you're talking about, a lot of high profile cases, and these aren't like 90s cases, 80s cases. These are modern day cases where these cops just aren't wearing body cams. And that's absurd. I'm pretty sure that, based on what I've heard, just in the public discourse, for the past couple of years, it kind of seems like even most conservatives expect that cops are just wearing body cams at this point, and the worst part of it, aside from the fact that that's an abomination to begin with, it's that it takes us into a, you know, like an absolute dystopian discussion of justice. You know, we should, in Romeo Talley's case, it should have never been a situation. You know, we shouldn't, you said it perfect. It took so much energy and emotional and political capital just to get a name. If there was a body cam, you know, we would have known so much. There would be, the fight would have been completely different. You know, if there were body cams, Danielle Brown, you know, Danielle Brown's situation would have been entirely different if there was a body cam. You know, Mark Daniels, you know, it's just, it takes us, like I said, into this dystopian reality where, you know, now we have to put forward all this energy and this effort to fight for justice, which would always be there. But the type of justice that's available to us is a much lower level of justice. So, you know, we really gotta, you know, in the coming years, and this is going to be a theme of our discussion today, it's that we really need to start executing. You know, the people need to start executing what we expect for the accountability of our police officers in this area, because we're so far behind. You know, so many people are, you know, dying with the police around, and we just don't really know what happened because they don't have a lot of them don't have body cams around here. Even the Pittsburgh police, you know, in Mark Daniels' case, they do have body cams, but somehow there were no body cams when he gets killed. It's asinine, you know. So we're really far behind, and we got to start stacking wins. We really do.
For sure. What do you mean? I want to jump back to something you just said. What do you mean by the people should start executing accountability when it comes to the police?
Well, we gotta start winning. You know, we really do. It's on us. We need to get you know, 9 good judges that are going to seek justice, you know, in this upcoming election. We need to get Ed Gainey in there. We need to get a new district attorney. I would love to see Teron Jenkins be the next district attorney and deal with all of these new judges with restructuring this criminal justice system. You know, I would love to see Jerry Dickinson become our next congressman around here, one of our next congressmen around here. So it's just like they aren't going to get there by themselves. They aren't going to get there because they're good candidates. They're going to get there because we put them there, and we got to do it. You know, we really got to win. We have to. We're too far behind.
Period. Yeah. So I hear you saying, like, electing good candidates that actually care about people into these offices that literally, like, shape the way that our society runs. Really quickly, I want to uplift Sequoia Jeffries and Joyce Daniels, the sister and mother of Mark Daniels, Tasha Talley, the mother of Romeo Talley, Danielle Brown, the mother of Jalen Brown. So electing good officials is a part of that. What else do you see as being accountability measures that the people can take, right? Because accountability is one of those words like love that we throw around. We don't necessarily have a succinct idea of what it means. Oftentimes, like, our language around it, our definitions shift and are different from person to person. So what else do you see as being accountability measures that the people can take?
My favorite is just education. Just learn, you know, be open to it. There's so many, you know, there are in this game that we're playing, you know, in this big game of justice that we're trying to impact the system. Nothing is more important than learning and education. And, you know, it's important for us to keep into perspective just how far behind Pittsburgh is. The only way that we're going to get where we need to be is if we educate ourselves. And you know, that's why this is so important. You know, people like you and people like Fawn and people like Brandy and the people at APA, you know, really just push it. You know, like we just had this conversation. You know, the movement is developing and it's maturing a lot around here. You know, so much so more, you know, more than the past couple of years, and it's really exciting. And we just, you know, we really do got to deliver as much information about this as possible because it's good information. It's not political. Yeah, we want to get people in these offices, but when it comes to this discussion about, you know, justice and the criminal justice system, it's not political. It really isn't. You know, when you boil it down, when you get down to the nitty gritty, the only people that are disagreeing with us are the corrupt or the people that don't know enough. You know, if you really take a look at what's going on here, you realize that these are not political discussions. This is simply about justice, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. So I want to get very excited about these conversations. But for anybody who's not familiar, and it blew my mind how many people weren't familiar with Romeo Talley's case. And to be honest, I knew very little myself until I got involved. Like I remember seeing it, and then when things started to unfold, it was totally different than the original narrative that was put out there. So if you wouldn't mind taking some time to explain what those cases are, starting with Romeo, and some other cases that's in your mind right now that you've been working on.
I mean, yeah, Ramirez is just Ramirez case is just such a perfect example of how this system goes wrong. Ramirez is a good kid. You know, he was 24 years old, and he was walking home at night. A 911 call came in that there was a black guy with dreads that just held somebody up with a gun on Penn Avenue in Wilkinsburg. And what we know is that they didn't really even know what the description of the assailant was when they were conducting this investigation. When they were driving down Penn Ave, they were pretty much just stopping all the black guys, and talking to them. And they came up on Romeo, who is Romeo was walking down Penn. They came up behind him and they pulled an aggressive maneuver. They pulled over to the side and started yelling at him, right away, "Get your hands out of your pocket." And Romeo ran. And Officer Gowans, who like you said, it took us a long time to just get his name. Officer Gowans took off after him, chased him down a dark alley, claimed that Romeo fired a shot, and then returned fire, shooting Romeo 7 times. The biggest problem, I mean, aside from the fact that, what happened, the biggest problem in terms of, justice is that there was no body cams. So we couldn't see what happened, So in my opinion, the reason that so few people really understood and knew about Romeo, for one, the first thing is that there was no body cam. If there was a body cam, that we know how those things catch on like wildfire, on social media. So there would have been a lot more attention. We would have known exactly what happened. But what happened instead was the police were able to come out, and there's a couple of different police departments in this area that were involved in that situation. The police were able to come out and say, yeah, a gun was fired, and Gowans returned fire, killing him. So that tamped down any possibility realistically of the community, really rallying around this, because understandably so, a lot of members of the community looked at this and they're like, well, you don't shoot at the cops. So, but what has happened, and I can't get into, unfortunately, I can't get into too many details because there's a number of things that we've learned in the litigation that are confidential, but before that, just while we were fighting for them this summer, we came up with a number of pieces of evidence, official documents that kept disproving parts of the Wilkinsburg police story. And it's extremely frustrating. One of there, and again, when you're talking about Romeo Talley's case, it's absolutely devastating and heartbreaking because there are a number of levels of injustice. So the first one you start out with, they didn't even know what they were looking for, and then Romeo Talley starts, getting a little nervous that the cops are coming up behind him. He takes off running, then he ends up dead. He was a good kid and he was afraid of the police. So that's the first thing. Then there's no body cams. That throws us into this dystopian reality where we can't even really get justice, the way that we would need it in this type of situation. And then you throw in the Allegheny County Police and the District Attorney's Office. So you bring in, so not only are we dealing with the Wilkinsburg Police Department, we're now talking about the county, and remarkably, somehow, the investigation into the murder of Romeo Talley is still ongoing. It's ridiculous. So here we are, myself and my partner, attorney Max Petrunia, we're trying to do, whatever we can in this lawsuit, but we don't have any evidence. Wilkinsburg, they're defending this case. They don't have any evidence because it's an open investigation and the district attorney won't turn over their file. So, when you're talking about Romeo Talley, you're talking about just several layers of injustice that are completely bastardizing the quest for justice. And we're doing it, all of us, all the people that supported his family, we're doing it necessarily so. But it is such the bar is so low here. It's so far below what we should be doing. The discussions in 2021, are you kidding me? And these are the discussions we're having, so, that's Romeo, that's Romeo Talley in a nutshell, the case.
Yeah, man, it's all insane. When Romero was murdered, I remember there was a statement put out by the mayor saying basically it was a justifiable shoot. Like that's just it. It was pretty cut and dry, and that was the end of it. And then we learned that wasn't the case, and they didn't even have a chance to do an investigation when that statement went out. Remind me, I may be misremembering this, but when Tasha found out that her son was murdered, was one of the questions that they asked her was what hand he was?
Yeah, to my understanding, the Allegheny County police showed up and asked, what hand it was. I don't know all the details of that. One of the problems is I would know if I had the case file, if I had their police reports, but I don't. It's an open investigation. This kid was killed, at the end of 2019. It's not as if there's like a bunch of different video that you have to go through. This is not a complicated case. There is no excuse for why the investigation is still ongoing. It's just one cover up after another, stacked on top of injustices. And when we're talking, this is just like tangent real quick to get back to body cams. It's a business model. Like the business model, a lot of these, whether it's towns, universities, municipalities, cities, a lot of these places just aren't getting body cams until somebody gets killed. That's the business model. We're going to save money nobody says that. None of these council people are like, hey guys, we're going to save money on body cams until somebody gets killed and then we'll buy them. That's not what they say, but that is the unspoken understanding. So it's, there's just, we're so far behind, and we really do. We got to start stacking wins because situations like Romeo Talley, this can't repeat. Thank God that somebody, if that is the case and Rossfeld wasn't wearing a body cam because East Pittsburgh didn't have them, thank God that somebody was taking a video out of their window. Otherwise, there's a very good chance that Antoine and that would have ended in the exact same situation that Romeo Talley did. Just kind of like covered up and confusing. That just goes away. Thankfully, it didn't happen like that.
Yeah, man. Is there any statute of limitations or anything as far as like reporting the information? So like, how long can an investigation continue to go on? Like, when do they have is there a time limit or when they have to turn over their files? Like, what does that look like?
Well, no. And, so much of this comes down to prosecutorial discretion. So that's a golden word for Allegheny County and Pittsburgh residents to understand. If you care about this city, if you care about changing this system, the criminal justice system is the biggest drain that our system has, whether it's in terms of people or if it's in terms of money, both. It's just a horrible, cancerous system. And, when you're talking about, something like, how does an investigation just stay open? Prosecutorial discretion. The prosecutor has so much power. They get to make so many choices. How does baby Marcus's confessed killer go free? Prosecutorial discretion. We need a prosecutor, we need a district attorney in there. And again, I'm going to keep saying it, and I apologize to Tehran, because I don't know that, he necessarily wants somebody out there like this. I want Tehran Jenkins in there so bad, because that's a man that I know will use his discretion properly in these situations. Like, if honestly, and I'm pretty sure everybody could agree, if Tehran Jenkins was in there, that baby Marcus situation would have been handled considerably different. If Tehran was in there, and he fucking should be, pardon my French, Romeo Talley's investigation isn't still open. It's just, it's simple. There are levers. We need we need a district attorney in there. Prosecutorial discretion is one of the keys to flipping the system. Oh, and and getting back to your question about the statute of limitations, Gino Joyce, a white kid that appears to have been beat to death by his friends. Gino's case, that was years ago, and Gino's case is still open. The investigation is still open. This is not an isolated incident. There are a lot of open investigations around here.
Wow. Something about that seems not right.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to Pittsburgh. Welcome to Allegheny County. This shit ain't right. And everybody knows that. Everybody in the system knows that. There's a lot of people in this system, and this, this starts getting us into the judicial elections. There are 9 seats open. There are a lot of judges. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There have been, the judges in Allegheny County have formed, some of the more powerful pillars of the status quo, of the old boys network around here. And they're going down one way or another, So, the Donna Jo McDaniel went down. We're looking at a situation where a lot of these judges are, aging out. They're going to be gone soon. And those, that we have such a golden opportunity. So much of the old guard is on its way out, and they're getting embarrassed along the way. Look at Tranquility. Tranquility turned into an absolute dumpster fire. And that's a situation the system is going to judge Tranquility, because he made, ridiculous and stupid, arrogant, racist remarks, because these people are so used to not getting called on their shit. So it's we find ourselves, in front of a judicial election that it has the potential to completely turn the tide around here. You can't. Well, it's incredible. We very well could put 8 or 9 new judges in there that will do the right thing, that won't just do something because that's the way that things are always done around here. Fuck that. That time needs to be done, and that's on us. It's we got to get those politicians in there.
Period. Word. So that was all right. So I definitely want to spend a decent amount of time on the judicial election, because it is super, super real, right? Like, these are people deciding our lives, our fate. A quick aside: several years ago, there was a ballot vote to increase the judicial retirement age from 70 to 75. Which was super, super important, because it kept a lot of folks who are wildly violent in their seats for at least 5 more years, longer than they ever needed to be. So just keeping in mind, like, the importance of voting. Like, people have their different opinions on voting. Like, there's a lot of complexity to the way, like, government works, but ultimately, like, these are folks, like, this is very real. And when we have folks in these power positions who don't mean us any well, this is what happens. So with Ramirez case, like, that's still ongoing. You're fighting for the family, and it sounds like the system is kind of fighting back. Is that where things kind of stand?
Yeah. So we're in a situation where we're going to see what we can get. It's going to it's going to take a couple of months. We're going to try to get our hands on whatever we can get on. But and Wilkinsburg is in the same situation. They're involved in this lawsuit too. They're getting sued. Their lawyers want information. So, that is where the lawsuit stands. It's what can we get access to? And then once we understand what we can or can't get access to, then, the court, the lawyers, we have a discussion with the court. What are those implications? What does that mean? If this is the information that we have, how do we move forward? So that's where Ramirez case stands.
And last thing on that I'll say is there any way that the community can support Tasha Talley and the family of Romeo Talley at this point, to your knowledge?
I know that, there are people like you and people like Fawn, people like Nikki Joe that are regularly, thinking about, always brainstorming something to do, so, I think that's it. Just, keep his name on the front of your mind. It's an important case in this area. It's not going away no matter what. Where there's still going to be a lot of energy from the people that care about this family and about this case, that, just keep your eyes peeled, be ready to be engaged, be ready to not let this happen again. Ramirez case, JB's case, these are all horrible cases, but in these cases, there's a reason that we have to fight so much, because we can change things with them. They do have implications.
Word up. All right. What about JB's case? What's going on? What happened there? What happened to Jalen Brown? And what's going on with his mother, his beautiful mother, Daniele Brown?
Yeah. So things appear to be going well for once. I'm not going to say too much, unfortunately. There are a number of things coming down the pipeline. We are all very lucky to, first off, seen what Daniele Brown did. And then we are very lucky that she did not die doing it. So, it's a devastating case. And again, it would not, there was so much confusion about this case, understandably so. There was a university, there was Danielle. This stuff got so hot, and it happened at a very hot time. So I had a lot of people reaching out to me, journalists, national journalists that were, wanted to report, but it was a confusing situation, mainly because there was no body cam. If there was a body cam, we would it's like I said, it creates a dystopian reality, creates a dystopian discussion about justice, because it prevents you from seeing what really happened. And it's so, but I do, I'm pretty confident that in the, hopefully soon there will be, some positive reporting that we can do when it comes to that case. Oh, and I want to say something about Danielle. So, this was a woman that, when her hunger strike lasted 237 days. So one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of people right away are very skeptical of that, because they just assume that that's not possible. And one of my favorite things, and again, in these cases, I'm very thankful to be involved in them. I'm very thankful that, these are the cases that are part of my law practice. And one of my favorite things has been just experiencing Daniele Brown. Every mother that I've met that has been in, this type of situation is just shattered in a way that we would expect. You have to expect that when you lose your prized child, your oldest, that's something that you were so proud of, and the same for Romeo. These were good kids. and they died under different circumstances. But to not, for these families, particularly the mothers, and that's something that Danielle always says, like, this is about the mothers. If you don't have a body cam on your cop, you are doing so much more damage than the loss of life or the questions. These mothers need closure. There would be so much, we would have been dealing with such different circumstances. We would be having different arguments and debates, with city councils if there were body cams in these cases. It's just insane that we're just having these discussions that you see Danielle Brown, and getting back to that, a lot of people just assume that hunger strike could not have been legit, because that doesn't make any sense that a human being can do that. That's because not many people have come across a human being with the Constitution of Danielle Brown. It was not a coincidence that JB was so exceptional. That didn't come out of nowhere. JB, and I'm sure he was a talented kid. I'm sure he was naturally intelligent, but he came from a thoroughbred bloodline. It's not many people could do what Danielle Brown did, because she's a bad motherfucker. So I'm very thankful that I got a background view of what went on with that. But it's just these cases where it's really frustrating, because we're just having very low level discussions. We need to be having high level discussions, and that's why we do need we need different politicians in there, because we're not the status quo, the old boys network. They never had these discussions, and they just expect to not do it. But luckily, there aren't many young ones around. The old boys network is old. So, it's time to get them the hell out.
So, yeah, man. And so for anyone who's not familiar, and Paul, please correct me if I get any of this wrong, I'm good at that. Jalen Brown, Danielle Brown's son, was attending University of Duquesne and turned 21. And on his 21st birthday, there was some sort of incident of crisis. The police showed up, and somehow Jalen ended up out a closed window. That is, as far as I know, as far as like information that is confirmed. My understanding is that the narrative that was given is that he had some sort of mental health crisis, but not really sure what role the police had played in their presence in the last moments of his life.
Yeah, and it's honestly, it's a very imperfect discussion. There's no way. That was one of the things that I would tell journalists, that because there was no body cam in this situation, there is no way to have like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's get to justice. You can't do it. In these situations, when there's no body cam, you cannot do it. You can fight. You have to fight. You have to fight for justice for that family, but in these situations, it's imperfect, and we're armed with much less than we should be, and it prevents accountability. So, there's no way to have that discussion. We could have an intelligent discussion about this if there was a body cam, just like Romeo. It would set the plate. We would have a lot of problems. It doesn't fix the problems. It sets the stage to have a functional conversation about what we expect justice to look like. But here we are, and we're just, it's crude. We're like, it's just really, it's a really crude exercise in justice here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County.
Yeah. So far, what I heard you mention about as far as accountability goes is electing people who actually care about people into power offices, and also body cams, because Yeah, in 2021, like, yeah, body cams. Do I got that correct so far?
Yeah, yeah, and and I want to get into bring it into the judicial election, but I'm also going to talk about a prosecutor, the district attorney. Um, you know, I want to mention because we only have like 15 minutes here, I think. So I want to mention what'd you say?
I do what I want, so you know.
Oh, right on, right on. So yeah, I want to we got to talk about a big chunk of the fight, the movement, the fight, whatever we want to call it, that is missing in Pittsburgh. It might even be the biggest chunk that we just are. We have blinders on here in Pittsburgh because we're not exposed to this fight, and the fight it involves the district attorney's office. It involves the judges. It's the wrongful conviction problem. It is massive. I would, I don't pretend to have a number of how many wrongful convictions there are in Pittsburgh or Allegheny County because there is so little information about them because we haven't been able to really dive into it. Because although cases have come forward in the past couple of years, which have provided opportunities to start chipping away at that wall, every single one of those cases has passed. And, we no longer have the opportunity to file lawsuits for those. So, we're still very much hoping that the opportunity, and I'm pretty confident that, we have some coming down the line. However, let's take it to Philadelphia. I practice in Philadelphia as well. And this is going to wrap everything together. There has been something like 18 or 20 exonerations of wrongful convictions and innocent people in Philadelphia since 2018. And the way it did not happen by accident. It happened by putting a prosecutor in there, in Larry Krasner, that was willing to change the infrastructure of the district attorney's office to serve justice, to investigate corruption. And what it's called a conviction integrity unit. And a conviction integrity unit is it's a revolutionary part of the infrastructure of a district attorney's office. It sits at the top of the district attorney's office, and it's in charge of investigating wrongful convictions, but also investigating corruption. And, fast forward in 2020, he took office in 2018 in Philly. Fast forward to now, and there's been, 18 or 20 wrongful convictions. Now let's start, take it another notch politically. There's a very, I wouldn't say vibrant, but there is the beginning of discussions about reparations and what society should expect from the rest of society to make up for what happened to Black people throughout our country's history. We're having that it's a discussion. It's not the most, especially in a place like this where Pittsburgh is further. It's apartheid. Pittsburgh is an apartheid city. So we're very far behind. But look at what's happening in Philadelphia. When you talk about reparations, you have 18 to 20 exonerations. You should Google, Philadelphia wrongful conviction settlement. It's almost like every couple of weeks, the city of Philadelphia is being forced to pay out $9 million, $8 million, $6 million, $10 million. And in the process, they are, this new district attorney's office is collecting the evidence of the corruption of those homicide detectives. And by the way, let's start having a conversation about, rethinking policing. Rethinking policing, defunding the police, a huge, if not the biggest chunk of that has to do with the concept that our politicians and the people that say that they support the police do not. The people that say they support the police, they don't support the police. They support the politicians that say they support the police. And what do the politicians that say they support the police do? Nothing. They don't change anything. They just keep putting the police in no-win situations that they have no business being involved in. Our homicide detectives, they are just grasping at straws. Sure, sometimes they're, and that's not to say that every single case is bullshit. They're not just, these homicide detectives are not just framing everybody, but they're framing a lot of people. And I'm pretty confident. You look at just in Philadelphia, 18 to 20 exonerations in the past couple of years. How many, and we're talking about a system that does violence. In Philadelphia, I bet you it's a much smaller number of people that have been killed by the police. So we're having, our society generally is starting to have a better conversation about police violence, about police departments that are killing people. However, we're not having a very good conversation about the much larger number of lives that are being stolen by the police, these police officers. And they don't even necessarily know if this is the guy that they were looking for. It's just the person that they could build a case on. So there's just, you're talking about, police. Why, we as a society just allow, all these homicide detectives and these police departments to continue investigating cases that they're not closing, that they can't close, but they're able to cash some pretty big paychecks and get a lot of overtime by investigating these cases that they are not equipped to solve. It's the same exact thing with narcotics. Why the hell there's we should police law enforcement is not the proper mechanism to regulate the drug trade. You can't do it. I don't care how many tables full of guns and drugs cops want to pose in front of. It doesn't mean that they're any good at doing their job, and that's no offense to the cops, because they shouldn't be doing the fucking job to begin with. They're only doing that job because these politicians are too lazy to come up with better ideas. Yet half the country says they support the police. No, we don't. The people that support the police continue to put cops in positions that they can't possibly win. And then these cops who can't successfully do their position, they lie, because they have to. How do you win if you are outmatched? If you can't possibly win, if you can't possibly do your job properly, you're gonna lie. It is the system is built for good cops to fail or bad cops to have a field day. And so you can't say that you support the police if you are going to continue to expect them to fight battles that they could not possibly in a million years win.
Most definitely. Yeah. A system that's built on slavery and oppression can't possibly be good for people. And we talk about the fact that the police show up for domestic violence situations, for mental health situations. They're not trained for any of those things. And so what they know how to do is to be aggressive and violent and typically make things worse. What was the brother's name? Patrick Warren Sr. was just murdered in Texas a few months ago in front of his family by some officer that just didn't know what else to do, I'm assuming, or whatever, but definitely had no reason to shoot this man, wasn't a threat to anybody, and was murdered. And he's not the only one. Bruce Kelly Jr. was murdered in Wilkinsburg a few years ago by Wilkinsburg police, Pittsburgh police, and Port Authority police. But I digress. Before you go on so I want to definitely switch into the conversation around the judicial election and get into that. But before we do, I know you have a current case, and I'm not sure if this is a case you can speak on just yet, but in Penn Hills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's along with what you were just saying, when it comes to police officers being in situations that they have no business being involved in, a lot of times, our cops are hammers. The laws that society has written and the rules that society has eked out for these cops to play, they're hammers. And when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So, we have a situation where, in Penn Hills, where there was a minor domestic situation, everything was fine. The situation was calm. It was old, it was an elderly couple. She was disabled. She's a disabled Black woman. They were separated, and, fast forward to the Penn Hills police walking in to that situation that was completely calm. It was under control. The cops walk in, and what do we have? A couple of minutes later, we have a disabled Black woman whose arm was broken in half by the police. She ended up on her stomach, and this huge cop had his knee on her neck. So it's like, how does that happen? It happens because you just put a hammer into a situation where, you don't need a hammer. You need something much different, but, now we have, a disabled elderly Black woman with a shattered arm.
And trauma. I couldn't.
Trauma. It's just like PTSD. Mm-hmm. It's just, and I don't mean to, get into the details, the medical details, but that's predictably what you're dealing with, there's no reason for it. There's absolutely no reason. Like, a disabled elderly woman should not have her arm wrecked because of a minor domestic situation. That's not how this works. That's not justice. That's not what we expect out of our police.
Absolutely. Real quick shout out to Terrell Johnson. Spent 17 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. He and his wife, Miss Sandra Cole, and Teron Jenkins fought to get him out, and they did. But that's just an example of police corruption and the judicial system failing.
So, and picking up off of that with Terrell's case, Terrell's case is a situation, and this is one of the many main reasons that I want Teron Jenkins to be our next district attorney. The wrongful conviction problem, it's massive. Mm-hmm. And the way that a prosecutor is going to address it is massive. There are conversations, we need that, there have been very few wrongful convictions in this area overturned. So Teron has very unique experience. There are a bunch of reasons why I want Teron Jenkins to do it, and this is one of them. We need a prosecutor in there that understands these cases. These are very complex cases. When you're talking about wrongful convictions, you're not just talking about a trial. You're also talking about the appeals in the Pennsylvania Superior Court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. You're also talking about the post-conviction litigation, which happens at the state level. You're also talking about habeas corpus litigation, which happens at the federal level. So these are these cases, these wrongful convictions, and there are times where they go through that system that I just described a couple of times. So you need a prosecutor that has experience in those cases, and Teron he won one of them. So, I mean, and again, let's talk about that real quick. In a situation where, hypothetically speaking, and again, I apologize to Teron, but I just have to be honest, because this is the situation that we're in. So let's say somebody like Teron were to run for district attorney and he were to win. We have a district attorney now that can implement a conviction integrity unit, and he knows the basics. He knows the ins and outs of it. We could start getting the innocent people, which there are a number of them. Shout out to Cecilia Coleman and Joseph Hall. Joe Hall is our age, Shannon. He's been in there. He was convicted of murder, decades ago when he was a kid in high school. And his case since then has steadily fallen apart. Wow. People recanting, witnesses coming forward, eyewitnesses coming forward. But Joe Hall, an intelligent, level-headed man at this point, who, by the way, he's going to get out one way or another someday, and he's going to do good in this system because he is intelligent and he's educated on this stuff. He knows what's going on. So, we could be in a situation where somebody like Teron Jenkins implements a conviction integrity unit in here and starts getting people like Joe Hall out. It doesn't have to, thank God Terrell Johnson is out, but it can't end there. When you're talking about Terrell getting out, that has to have implications on the system. So, it can't just be, oh, wow, there was that fuck up. Okay. Now he's exonerated. Now Terrell's exonerated because of the fuck ups that happened in the system. Okay, case closed. That's over. No, it's just starting. There needs to be what a conviction integrity unit would do. There needs to be an investigation into every single one of the parts of Terrell's case that led to his wrongful conviction. And then it starts building on itself. What if, some of the homicide detectives that were involved in Terrell's case were also involved in Joe Hall's case? Okay, so now the conviction integrity unit has those investigations open, but now it has independent investigations into each of those police officers. And it's a snowball effect. So, it's a long-term play. So, you implement a conviction integrity unit, say in 2023, and in 2033, you are talking about an absolutely paradigm shifting impact that the conviction integrity unit and all of its investigations into police misconduct 10 years down the line, that has massive impacts. It doesn't, these cases don't just happen in a vacuum. When you have a district attorney that's willing to do the right thing and actually seek justice, it has a way of, just like circulating justice through the system. And it has a way of forcing the police departments into accountability, because that creates lawsuits. The more wrongful convictions there are, the more lawsuits there are, the more times that those cops have to go on the record explaining themselves. It's a way of exposing them. And when you expose them, all of these cops who for decades have been used to getting away with their bullshit, when they are exposed, it also means that the cops in the future aren't going to be able to get away with that same stuff. But we're operating, that's when the light is shining. That's when the light is shining in the system. Right now, here, the light is not shining. So we don't have those types of discussions. We don't have the types of discussions about what are the implications of Terrell Johnson's wrongful conviction. We just don't have those discussions. We don't have the discussions about what's the system going to do about Joe Hall's wrongful conviction, where it's just, Joe is just sitting in prison. His mom's fighting for him. The federal defender's office is fighting for him, but there's nothing else. So, and that brings me to the judicial elections. It's so interesting, Shannon, to work in Philadelphia.
Right before you get into that, I just wanted to draw a quick connection with your Penn Hills case and Neil Sims case. And I want to make sure that I mention that because the officer that broke this woman's arm and violated her in that way is also one of the officers that jumped on Neil a couple of years ago, the exact same officer. So thinking about officers that are repeat offenders of violence, we have cases of that. Like we do have experiences with officers, the officer Messioni or whatever, Gino Messioni, who shot and killed Mark Daniels, has shot someone else, I think, a year prior or 2 years prior. So we do have these repeat offenders. I mean, there is no accountability. So I wanted to make sure that was noted and highlighted to your point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, the elections, here's how it works in Philadelphia. Now Philadelphia is the poorest city in America. It's huge, so there are a lot of problems in Philadelphia. When I say, I talk about Larry Krasner taking office, that's not to say getting a good prosecutor in there doesn't solve all the problems. It just, it allows us to tweak the system in a way to start dealing with these problems better. So what's happening now is it's such a mind fuck because, I go from dealing with the district attorney's office in Pittsburgh, who it's basically just like barely even dealing with them. They're such a dumpster fire, to like at a lot of times, when you're criticizing the district attorney's office around here, yeah, sometimes you can criticize them as being corrupt, but also when you have just like a massively inefficient and poorly led organization, it's just a mess to begin with. So you don't necessarily have to call it corrupt, so like, in here, I don't even know if my emails are going to be replied to by the district attorneys, and if I have good evidence of a wrongful conviction and I reach out to the district attorney's office, there's a really good chance that they're not going to be on board. Maybe they might agree to a hearing or something, but they're not going to be proactive about figuring it out and about getting this, case positioned in a way that's going to achieve justice. Now, check out Philadelphia. I'm having great conversations with this district attorney's office and the various prosecutors about what we need to do to position and orient this case in a way that's going to allow it to move through the system to get justice. We're in a situation in Philadelphia where the judges, the old boys network judges, are pushing back on the district attorney's office because they are exonerating innocent people. So the district attorney, the old guard of the judges that haven't been replaced or haven't retired yet are basically telling the district attorney's office when they're trying to exonerate people, this is not your job. Your job is to be a prosecutor. That's bullshit. That's not how this works. Your job is to get justice. And if justice means that you need to file a motion as a prosecutor to overturn a conviction, that's what you do. And that is what needs to be, that's what we need to be able to do in the coming years. That's why this judicial election is so important. Our old guard is on its way out. We can start stacking this court with good people, good lawyers that are going to seek justice, that would not stop, hopefully, somebody like Teron Jenkins from filing a motion on behalf of Joe Hall saying that this case has completely fallen apart. There is no integrity to this conviction. Set this kid free. We need a judge to get that case and say, absolutely, here are my findings of fact. Mr. Hall, we apologize to you. Cecilia, we apologize to you. Enjoy the rest of your life. That is what is at stake here in these elections. We need judges to start seeking justice. We need a district attorney that is seeking justice, not just doing things the way that they've always been done. That's bullshit. That's what got us here in the first place. That's why Pittsburgh is such a garbage place. That's why it's so far behind. It was never about justice. This area was never about, this system was never about justice. It was about maintaining everybody's power, maintaining everybody's place, keeping the right names in place. Fuck that. That day is over.
Most definitely. I'll even add that, like, when people are released after wrongful conviction, that they deserve reparations, because you lose parts of your life. And that's that on that. Before it is 6:05 now. What else? I know you had mentioned a little while ago about, or when we were chatting about the slate of 8. Do you have any thoughts on those folks there, or anything you want to add with?
Yeah, so there's a number. I'm not familiar with the entire slate of 8. I'm happy to see that, at the very least we got a slate together, and I say we, just like the community and activists generally, people in the, that are active politically, got a slate together. And, I am familiar with a number of the people that are on the slate of 8, Giuseppe Roselli, Lisa Middleman. There are Nicola Henry Taylor. There are people on that slate that I am very confident will be great judges, that are not going to be biased. They're not part of the old guard. That is so important. And there are even if, there's, to a large extent, it is a new day. So I'm not entirely, as there are the wrong candidates. We need to do a good job of impressing upon people that, on all sides of the spectrum, that being a prosecutor doesn't make you a good judge. You know, that's been one of the problems. You know, our society is just like, we just assume that, oh, he's a prosecutor, let's put that guy on, you know, on the bench. Look what happened with Tranquilli. You know, Tranquilli was the in charge of prosecution, you know, in the DA's office, and that dude is just wretched. That he's as corrupt and racist, you know, by good evidence, you know, as it comes. So we need to really expect different things out of our judges. You know, we need to the defense attorneys can be great judges. You know, somebody like Giuseppe, for instance. You know, there's a we need our judges to be to call balls and strikes, to cut this down the middle. You know, are cops lying in every case? No. You know, we don't. Being a defense attorney, you know, voting for a defense attorney to get into, you know, the judge's seat, that doesn't mean that they're going to set free violent people and dangerous people. It doesn't mean that they're going to try to screw over the prosecutor. It doesn't mean that they're anti-cop. It means that they have a different perspective. You know, it means that they've seen the other side. Somebody like Giuseppe would kill it. And he wouldn't be, you know, and I hate the word progressive. You know, we throw the word progressive around so much when we're talking about these elections. It's not that, you know, it's really is apolitical. Are you going to be a good judge? Are you going to seek justice? Are you going to hold people accountable when they lie? You know, are you going to hold criminals accountable when they lie? Are you going to hold cops accountable when they lie? You know, and that's one of the nice things. That would be a really positive development. There are a number of defense attorneys that are on this, that are, you know, up for election on this judicial ticket, that know the tricks. You know, there are a number of obvious tricks that crooked cops play to hang convictions on people and to keep themselves out of trouble. Having defense attorneys in there would be a good situation. It wouldn't mean that they're out to get the cops. It means that they wouldn't have let them get away with the shit that they always get away with, you know, under the current regime, under this old boys network. So, you know, we have a golden opportunity to get a number of really good defense attorneys on this, you know, in our judiciary here in Allegheny County. We need to start balancing that shit out. It's been Tranquilli, you know, Tranquilli is a perfect example. You know, for far too long in this county, the judges in there have been tough on crime prosecutors. That's junk. It's lazy. It's lazy. It has nothing to do with justice. Being tough on crime, being about law and order, they aren't. When somebody says the words law and order, so it's a pretty easy red flag to identify the fact that you don't care about law or order. You care about keeping the cops out of trouble. Dirty cops out of trouble. You know, that's not law and order. The law is supposed to apply to dirty cops too.
Period. And I want to speak on Miss Tiffany Sizemore. She's also a part of the slate for 8 for a judicial election. Tiff, I've known for a number of years. She's supported a number of my students who were, you know, being targeted by their school district or otherwise. She shows up. She blows it down. Like, and she is absolutely unapologetic. Here for the truth, here for the people. Like, I mean, an amazing person. So, like, that's, yeah.
So Tiffany and I are tag teaming a very hot case. It's the 15-year-old girl that was beat up by the West Mifflin police on that school bus. Oh. So, you know, I was very lucky early on, and this just goes to show you the quality of Tiffany. You know, very early on in that case, that was hot. You know, that got really hot really quick, and Tiffany just completely extended herself. You know, it's juvenile. You know, it's juvenile, and there isn't anybody in this system around here, and quite frankly, nationally, that have more and deeper experience than Tiffany Sizemore. So, you know, I can't sing Tiffany's praises enough, because I don't have a ton of experience in that realm, but she does. And I've been very much able to, you know, lean on her in this situation. And she's a rock. You know, Tiffany is exciting. Tiffany is the type of person that, and I mean, I don't want to, again, here I am just like talking about what I want out of all of these people, but, fuck me, but no, Tiffany is just in a position. She's young. I think Judge is going to look great on Tiffany, but there are just, I wouldn't want to limit. I wouldn't want to limit what Tiffany can accomplish, if we can put her in the right positions.
Yeah, an amazing person, absolutely. If you do not know about Tiffany Sizemore, I highly recommend you look her up or reach out to her. Like, she's super approachable, like, person, human being, but it's not for the stuff. Like, she ain't for the BS with nobody. Yeah, definitely. All right, bet. All right, Paul. So I appreciate you taking this time out this evening to discuss all of the things. I mean, like, jewels after jewels, and also like uplifting and upholding all of the folks that you are, you've been walking side by side with and advocating for. Is there a couple things? Is there anything that folks can do for Joe Hall and his family to support around them?
Google Joe Hall. Educate yourself. There's a lot of really good information out there. So, there and, Cecilia, his mom, Cecilia Coleman, has always been dedicated to it, is always getting as much information out there as possible. And quite frankly, we've seen it. We've seen Rodney Reed. We've seen, these free so-and-so movements. Pittsburgh and Allegheny County would be very well served if we could get a free Joe Hall movement going. It's not easy, but he's our age. He's been in there, for way too long, but he hasn't disintegrated. He hasn't lost hope. He's educated himself. He's become strong. We need Joe Hall. We as advocates, and as a community, if we were able to rally around Joe and help him get justice, that's going to, a rising tide lifts all ships. We can do damage if we can rally around Joe.
Word up. And then, so to that, and in any of your cases, right, or generally, how can people get in touch with you to start the fight, right? Like, the social fight, or to seek your assistance? Like, what does it look like for folks to reach out to you?
Hit me up on social media. Hit me up. You feel free to email me. So I am busy. I'm not always taking on cases, but I'm available. I'll do what I can generally.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to include your email or no?
Yeah, it's should I type it here? Or it's PJ. It's my name, my first initial P, last name Jubas, and then esq@gmail.com. So that's PJUBASESQ@gmail.com.
Oh, the wonders of technology.
Right on.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Paul. Like, I appreciate you, and I'll see you around in these streets.
Yeah. Absolutely. I appreciate it, Shannon. Just, this is it, man. This is so important. We need to get this. There is nothing more critical for us to do than get this information out there, actionable information.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you, letting me on here and just kind of allowing me to rant. That was a really broad spectrum that we covered, but I think we touched on a lot of important stuff there and really, had a holistic discussion about this and our position in it. So I really appreciate that. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely. So thank you again, Paul. Thank you for everyone who's been tuning in and commenting. Please definitely stay engaged. Share this live stream. It is on social media. It's on our YouTube page, and it will be uploaded onto our podcasting platforms whenever I feel like doing it. But it is on, the socials. Our next, and speaking about like narrative, the importance of narrative, like narrative is absolute power, right? Like we live and die off a narrative. Like people's lives are created and taken away based on narrative. So our next episode is going to be focused on police history, or not police history, Pittsburgh history, particularly Black Pittsburgh history, because it's a thing that's lost completely. We don't necessarily have any places to hold our history, even like general Pittsburgh history. There's not like a Pittsburgh history museum, all right? Like we don't learn the things that we've experienced as a collective. And when we don't learn and know about the things as a collective, we're typically doomed to repeat them. And that's often what happens. So definitely check us out next week on that. Again, it only takes about 25% of a community to create change, sustainable change. So it doesn't take all of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is 310,000 people who live in, about 1 million who engage with Pittsburgh on a daily basis. It only takes about 25% of that. We're a small city, like we can make change a lot. We're closer to creating change and affecting change than we feel like we are. So just keep that in mind. Anyone who is interested in reaching out, if you have a story to tell, if you have something that you want to uplift or amplify, feel free to reach out. You can leave a voicemail or text message to us, 412-453-6309, or you can email me at racialjusticemedia@gmail.com. We're always doing a lot of interesting things, exciting things. And also, I am looking to build out our team here. It's been little old me for the past couple of years, and I'm tired. I'm doing everything. So if anyone's interested in joining the Narrative Justice CS podcast, help with the tech or the broadcasting, if you would like to, host at all, you can reach out with the same credentials as well. Until next time, y'all have a good one.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah, man.